In the beginning of this year, information about the possibility of UFOs in our airspace became flooded in our news cycle, social media, and every dinner conversation. However hot this topic was, or is right now, the origins of ufology, the study of UFOs, goes way further back than the Chinese weather balloon over Billings, Montana.
A high-altitude surveillance balloon.
The extraterrestrial hypothesis proposes that some unidentified aerial phenomena, UAPs, could be best explained as a physical aircraft operated by extraterrestrial intelligence, non-human aliens, or non-occupied alien probes from other planets.
My name is George Eberhardt. I'm retired. I have been a librarian and a journalist. The Center for UFO Studies, CUFOS, is a organization of civilians. Anybody that is interested can join us in finding out what the answer to the UFO question is. What is the UFO phenomenon? It deserves some scientific study. It deserves to be preserved. We do have a huge number of cases that we've investigated. The history of the UFO phenomenon is just as important as finding out what it is.
What is the history, and how did we get here? What can learning about our past teach us about the current UFO situation we're in?
In 1947, when there was a large wave of flying discs, as they were first called, everybody was seeing them in the West, in the East, in the Midwest. The Air Force kept getting asked questions. What are these? Are these yours? Are they the Navy's? What's going on? Are they Russian? And so the Air Force was asked to look into what these flying discs, flying saucers were. And they initiated a project called Project Sign at first in 1947 to look into all this. It didn't really get going until 1948. There were a number of people who thought that they could be extraterrestrials. There are other people that say, no, that's crazy. They got rid of the people that were in favor of the alien hypothesis, and they renamed the project Project Grudge. They didn't do anything until 1951. They initiated Project Blue Book. The CIA convened a panel. The panel came up with some recommendations that ultimately the Air Force took as being, well, we're going to look at stuff, we're going to issue these reports, and we're going to say there's nothing to worry about. That's what Project Blue Book did until the Air Force got entirely sick of this around 1968, and they contracted with the University of Colorado to conduct a scientific survey of UFOs. But it was a wipe, and they came out with a report in 68, late 68, that said, yeah, don't worry about this, there's nothing to UFOs, they're not aliens, it's anything but. The Air Force got out of the business, no more Project Blue Book, and that's actually when the Center for UFO Studies was started right after that in 1973, because the astronomical consultant for Project Blue Book, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, said, yeah, I think there is something to UFOs. Let's set up a civilian agency to look into reports. And so he did, and that's where we are now.
Another civilian organization that has worked with the military, CUFOS, and other organizations is MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network.
I've been on the board of MUFON now for 20 years or so. My name is Rob Swiatek, and I am retired at the moment, but I've been retired for a few years. But my background, real briefly, I'm a physicist, and I worked at the United States Patent and Trademark Office for my career. MUFON, it grew out of an earlier organization that encompassed investigators in all 50 states back in the late 1960s and 1950s. And MUFON sort of split off from that organization in 1969. Basically, it's an organization of people who are investigating UFO sightings.
What makes people and organizations so interested in this topic? And what all does ufology encompass?
It's just the study of the UFO phenomenon in all its various manifestations, whether it be sighting reports, whether it be analysis of UFO photographs, or analysis of material that might be left behind after a UFO is seen at a certain site, all encompass what we would call ufology. And we try to do it from a scientific point of view. The UFO subject is very complex. There's many parts and components to it. But it is important to, as we would say, do your homework on the subject. It's not wise to just make broad brush statements like, oh, people just don't know what they're seeing in the sky when they go out and they look at things. So you can be assured that if these things were really alien spacecraft of some type or manifestations of alien intelligence, real scientists and the government would know about it. Well, it's not quite that simple. You just have to go back and put the time into it to start getting a grasp as to what some of the components are, and then you're better able to speak about this and make conclusions coming from a point of some learning.
Regardless of what you may believe, it seems that research, questioning, and the truth are the driving forces for many in this community. Passions aside, what can science and practical application teach us about what might be out there? When we think of outer space, many of us are in awe of its beauty and wonder. The great unknown, a final frontier. The vast majority of us aren't astrophysicists, astronomers, or planetary scientists. But how do they feel about the alien hypothesis and the study of ufology?
My name is Joelda Moranci. I currently work as an aerospace engineer at Blue Origin, where I test avionics for our lunar lander program. And I recently graduated from UChicago doing a degree in astrophysics, and also kind of focusing on like planetary science as well. In all technical terms, UFOs do exist just by the nature of their name. Many things are in the sky that we don't understand. When it comes to whether it's intelligent alien life, I'm more on the hesitant side to like say it's aliens or not. A lot of scientists will like usually say when there's like a UFO sighting or like with all these balloons, they'll usually say it's never aliens, which I, for the most part, agree with. I don't think that will always be our defense. Knowing how big this universe is, to think that we're like the only living things that have evolved, there has to be something out there for sure. Whether or not there's like intelligent life in our own solar system, I don't think we're at that point. I have a good feeling that intelligent life exists somewhere, though I feel like they're in a very similar situation to us, where they either just don't have the technology to like reach us in some shape or form. So if there was intelligent life far deep into the universe in a different galaxy, depending on like how far they are, what they will see of Earth and like our solar system may be wildly different from what's currently happening. Maybe things have evolved, we just don't know. Which is why I think aliens choosing to visit our solar system is like a kind of a unique possibility, only because like to my knowledge there's not too much that's special about our own solar system that would, I guess, have them choose us versus somewhere else.
So, not out of the realm of possibility, but not quite an alien invasion either. As Joelda mentioned, there's just so much unknown about intergalaxy travel. But what is known about air travel?
It's a great mixing of kind of science and art. My name is Tom Stout. I'm a captain with the world's largest commercial airline. 40 years I started when I was 19. Flying basically it's a sense of leaving this kind of crazy world and you're up and you have a great view. You're always worried about something getting in your way. You know, you got to keep an open mind. There might be something out there.
Keeping an open mind seems to be a theme heavily adopted by those who work in the field of aviation, space, and the unexplained. I wonder if that means everyone has a story or has heard a story about the possibilities of life outside our own, or at the very least, a UFO.
I've never for myself seen anything, but there's a lot of time in the cockpit when you're at cruise and you get a chance to kind of talk to the pilot next to you. And at that time, someone can bring something up if they've seen something in the news or something that they've heard of or a friend of them saw. So, there's a story or two out there. I think my initial reaction on that, as my prior background in the military, is that it's some kind of a military program that folks just don't know about and won't know about for many years, that just happens to show up that day.
You can't talk much about UFOs, UAPs, and ufology in general without mentioning the military.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the ASA. My gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west.
After the termination of Project Blue Book, the military took a back seat to its importance in the matter. However, recent declassification of naval aviation logs, the military has invested itself back into the alien hypothesis.
Well, if there's like, look at that thing. It's rotating.
A December issue of the New York Times, where some New York Times reporters were given access to some military videos. They had never been released before, actually, and they weren't officially released until a few years later by Pentagon. It led to Congress setting up the AARO, which is the Department of Defense agency that is now looking into UFOs. Since the Chinese balloon fiasco, the military has said that they are recalibrating their radars to be able to pick up objects like that. Most people would have an attitude of the military. If they're collecting UFO reports, it's only going to be for their own use and they're not going to release anything. And that is kind of backed up by the fact that the last report didn't really say very much. Well, maybe they don't know that much yet because it's an ongoing investigation. But the impression that most people get from the government is that they may know something, but they're not going to tell you much.
We're operating in uncharted areas with the modern study of ufology. With the conception of the AARO, All Dominion Anomaly Resolution Office, under the Department of Defense, things might change in terms of the science, transparency, and skepticism that comes from the government and UFOs. Sightings are by far one of the most important parts of ufology. The way these witnesses describe their encounters are not only profound, but oftentimes life-altering in many ways. UFO sightings can happen anywhere to anyone at any time.
My name is Clifford Bruder, and I'm an Airbus captain for American Airlines. I joined the Air Force when I was 18, and I was enlisted for 8 years. I did have a couple experiences when I was younger, one when I was a teenager, and then again when I was stationed at Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, Arizona. I had an experience there that I think was rather extraordinary. It was a clear night. It was probably 9:30 in the evening, close to summertime. I was outside with a group of other people, and I just kind of looked up, but I noticed there was this one light that was moving. It looked like it was a fair distance, and it was moving slowly, slower than you would expect a jet aircraft to move. And I kind of watched it as it kind of came across, but then it suddenly stopped. And I was like, okay, that's unusual. I just stood there and watched it for maybe a minute or so. But then it suddenly kind of moved in the direction that it came for a second or two. But then, and this is what I find, it was jaw-dropping. It suddenly accelerated at a speed that I have never seen ever. And since I saw that. And the interesting thing about this, as it did that in the night sky, clear night, it left a blue-green contrail behind.
The way Cliff describes his encounter decades later leads me to believe that these memories have been ingrained in the fabric of his mind. What does he make of these encounters as a former Air Force veteran and pilot?
Disbelief was the first thing. You know, you say, did you see that? You know what I mean? And I think I did say that to somebody who was like, yeah, what was that? You know, as a military guy, you know, I think a lot of people now saw the stories in the New York Times. You know, when you hear a Navy F-18 guy go, not only did I see this thing, but we have gun camera film. And when he describes how the thing disappeared as fast as it did, I go, yeah, that's what I saw too. You know, I'm a firm believer. And I guess I have to say that you may not be a believer, but when you see something like that, you believe in a hurry, you know, that, okay, maybe we're not the only ones around, you know, in the cosmic neighborhood.
I wonder what a sighting is like for someone less acquainted with the sky.
When we sit on our balcony, you see always kind of unique things. My name's Frank Ultraman. We moved to Las Vegas 17 years ago. We have a house that's in between Nellis Air Force Base and that Area 51. So there's a lot of aerial phenomena that flies around here all the time. First one that we saw was these two regular jet fighters chasing this big, long, white thing that was very transparent. That's what it looked like to us. Now, we read up about it because every time we see something, we go online and see if anyone else saw it. And this one was common. They were trying to say it was a stealth bomber. And when they turn sideways, they appear transparent. But this thing was twice the size of the other two jets. But who knows what we saw. The other one was really made the national news and everything. Was looked like something really bright on the mountain behind me. We're right at the foothills. We're about 3,000 feet up. At the top of the mountain, it looked like this big white glow. It was seen by everybody. And the next day they said, well, it was a rocket that exploded over the Pacific Ocean, which is 150 miles away from here. Who knows? Could be. I don't think I could see the Pacific Ocean from here or my angle, but could be, but we don't know what it was.
As someone who lives near Area 51 and the Nellis Air Force Base, it would make sense that you'd be in the prime location for UFO activity. How does your brain wrap around seeing something you can't explain?
You're a little odd first, but then your brain starts working and you try to rationalize it. So it's only a second that you have a little bit of on and go, oh, well, it could be this, it could be that, and then you wait to see if anyone else saw it. Nowadays, with social media and there's phone cameras, there's pretty good explanations that come up. I enjoy sitting on my balcony and seeing all these crazy things in the sky, but I have no idea exactly what it is.
Without witnessing one yourself, it's hard to tell how you react. But these witness statements can shed a little light on the impact, mystery, and disbelief that comes along with a close encounter of the first kind. The alien hypothesis, ufology, and the community that surrounds it is kind of like an amorphous group. Its theories, evidence, research, and testimonies all create a thesis that is working to uncover the truth, whatever that may be.
It's not just people who belong to MUFON. There are other UFO organizations, and there always have been. And then there are a number of people who are not associated with any organization, but they're independent researchers. And then there's news people, the media. In a sense, they become part of the UFO community when there's a sighting or when the subject suddenly takes on a greater visibility in society, like it did earlier this year with the Chinese balloon. Suddenly the UFO community kind of expands like a balloon, if you want to look at it like that. You have people who are scientists or researchers who ordinarily aren't doing UFO research, but they feel compelled to weigh in on this. They become part of the UFO community, and it's always sort of changing. But the core UFO community, as we would speak of it, would be the people who are involved in looking at cases, researching cases, writing books, even people who are doing blogs and podcasts. They don't always belong to organizations per se, and they're not intimately involved with the workings of MUFON or the Center for UFO Studies in Illinois. But they too are part of the community. And there's vast amount of disagreement amongst all those various components. A loosely divided family, and most people who are staying with the subject for any amount of time probably do feel there's a legitimate phenomenon here, whatever its origin might be.
As for answers, well, it seems that there isn't one, at least not yet.
We don't know all the answers right now, and for all we know, aliens could be watching us, but we just literally don't know. So I think it's important to stay curious. I think ufology is a good topic to study. There's like so much out there, and we're just like a small part of it.
A small part of a much bigger concept. Well, what can we take away from what we've learned?
The sky above you is limitless. It's like a whole new frontier up there. It's kind of unknown up there too, in a way. I think it's part of human nature to kind of seek those things out. So when you're up in the sky a lot, you're kind of close to whatever spirit you're close to. Although we're, as pilots, we're kind of very clinical, there's times that you're like, there's a sense of wonder up there. So I would say never lose that sense of wonder.
Never lose your sense of wonder, but also never completely close yourself off to things unknown.
So I know it's hard to believe when you've never seen something like that, but I would encourage people to be open-minded because I think there are enough reports, and I believe the military establishment is now taking it seriously. Let the science guide us as to what this could be. You know, we may all get an opportunity in the next 20 or 30 years to actually go into low Earth orbit to see the Earth from a different perspective. Maybe some people will have an experience that will change their minds about the possibility of life elsewhere.
And above all, why should we care?
What QFOS has found and what other UFO groups has found, and basically if they would admit it, what the military has found, is that only about 5% of anything that gets reported as a UFO is truly unusual or anomalous. Everything else is either a probable or definite identified flying object. The key to being a ufologist is having an open mind, but being as critically thinking as you can. Whatever people are telling you, critically assess it, but keep that open mind because you don't want to get invaded and nobody knows about it. All right? Also, you don't want to be hit by a Starlink satellite or space junk coming down. So yes, be aware of what's in the sky and try to identify what it is.
Although not a definite answer to the alien hypothesis, being aware of what's around you or what could be around you is more common knowledge than you'd think. Keep an open mind and keep an eye on the sky.